Hi guys, and welcome to a showdown featuring the legendary warriors Walt the Salt up against Elfarian Shades as the forces of the Empire do march upon the Dark Elf legions. Should be a good fun game. These are two factions which are relatively evenly matched, I would say. So I'll have to pop in here and have a quick little look at the builds. So for the forces of the Empire, looks like they have indeed made Obi-Wan proud and are going to be taking the high ground. In the front line, we have a mixture of spearmen and swordsmen, as so often is the case, dotted all the way along. Cheap, cheerful, happy to be here, and just ready to have a good time. And of course, they should be able to hold the enemy back for a considerable amount of time, especially bleak swords and dread spears and so forth, to allow the rest of the build to actually pack a punch and do the damage. In the central pocket here, we do have a unit of Halberds. Now, Halberds have had a recent buff in the latest patch, so be interesting to see how they do perform. There are already one chevron up here to start with, but I'll make sure to keep an eye on them. They've got some pretty cool models as well. The really long halberds make for some gruesome weapons throughout history, so we'll have to see how they perform here today. It looks like there's another unit in the back lines as well, who is babysitting a unit of huntsmen, as well as a great cannon. Apart from that, we have a huge cavalry contingent. Knights of the Blazing Sun are dotted into the sunset. Fantastic warriors with a bad-ass looking colour scheme. The black and gold, very flattering for them. But they also come in with fire damage, 100 armour and bronze shields. They're pretty good mid-tier cavalry. Very good on the old burst damage on the charge. Looks like we have a tiny skirmish contingent as well, with a unit of pistoliers. And flying high up above in the skies, we have Boris Todbringer, who's brought a lot less than Karl Franz, but is a little bit cheaper. He's kind of like cheaper brother, who does a relatively similar job. Now, Deadly Onslaught, Foe Seeker, the Middenland Runefang, as well as the White Cloak of Ulrich are his weapons and tools of choice, which are certainly some good combinations there. I'm a big fan of the Middenland Runefang. Restoring HP is really quite powerful. And to round out the build, it looks like we do have a Deathcaster as well, kind of a Spirit Leech and Fate of Buna. We even have a second unit of Pistoliers in the distance. Now for the forces of the Dark Elves, looks like they want to take a rather defensive approach here, with some defensive geometry. Coming up with some Dread Spears on the flanks, with Bleak Swords in the front line. Bleak Swords should be able to chew through those state troops eventually, but it will take them a little while, whereas Spearmen are protecting the flanks up against cavalry charges. We have some cavalry in the back line as well, which is something I'm a big fan of, using cavalry as more of a defensive tool to counter-initiate and counter-punch the enemy when they try to get into your back line. Is particularly powerful when you are going for a big, strong range core. So we do have double Cold One Knights and some Dark Riders. There are going to be some double Shades hidden as well. These guys, of course, have stalks. They can hide in the open. Decent armor-piercing long-range missiles. And not the worst combat stats to boot for ranged troops. We do have some of the Naked Ladies in the Dark Elf roster. The double Witch Elves, of course, can rampage foes and be a general nuisance, big damage dealers. And we have double Reaper Bolt Throwers looking to drag the forces of the Empire forward and to the Dark Elf lines. And to round out the build, leading them, we have the mighty Malekith on his very dread-looking dragon. He's come with a pretty good tool set as well. Gaze of Malice and Soul Sealer. Simple, but quite effective. Looking just to get those big Soul Sealer bursts in huge engagements. Now, double Bolt Throwers going to be relatively effective at targeting down Great Cannons, but I believe Great Cannon does come with more range. Let's have a little look. 450 up against 350, yeah. So that cannon's going to be able to unleash salvo after salvo as the Dark Elf forces do have to nudge their way forward. And this entire time is going to be pretty bad news, and a fantastic play here as well. What the Empire player is going to be doing is dropping a Spirit Leech on this Bolt Thrower, which hopefully for him will be able to destroy a model, and you see, down one goes. And with the Great Cannon firing in, perhaps the Empire can still win this engagement of artillery. It even looks like the Bolt Throwers are kind of misfiring at the moment, going after the Pistoliers, although it looks like for the troubles, that Wizard did indeed take a little bit of damage with the Overcast. And the Bolt Throwers are going to be unleashing upon swordsmen and so forth. They need to switch though and take down that Great Cannon. And no, looks like he's still going after the Pistoliers for now. Up in the skies, Boris is going to be coming out here to wave to Malekith and say a little hello. Don't think he wants to take that engagement on personally. Malekith from a big fat Soul Sealer can certainly turn that engagement all the way around, but he's going to be trying to drag Boris back here to the help of the Shades, which would be a good idea, but the Empire player, he's not falling for any of those pesky Dark Elf tricks, and simply going to be floating back to his own battle lines. Bolt Throwers have now realigned, and good focus fire now by the Dark Elf player, realising the threat of the Great Cannon and what it poses. He does not want to have to march all the way along the battlefield and up a hill, up against the forces of the Empire. It's certainly not good fun. It looks like we may have another Overcast Spirit Leech just to get that added range. It might be worth just trickling forward and doing normal Spirit Leeches, as he hasn't seen the threat of the Shades yet. But it looks like, yeah, this bolt thrower, it does manage to hold all its models for now, but takes pretty big damage. The other bolt thrower crew have lost all their pieces, so one Great Cannon up against two bolt throwers. The Great Cannon is coming out on top, but mainly due to effective play with Spirit Leeches. Now, the Shades are managing to push back the Pistoliers rather effectively. Pistoliers, good, cheap skirmish cav all round. They don't really want to, you know, hang around with any troops which are kind of on the ground and shoot. You tend to be a bit better than skirmish cavalry in those kind of engagements when they are trading fire. Dread Spears being used as well to push out the Pistoliers away from key targets as the Bleak Swords and Witch Elves now do start to advance. And yeah, these bolt throwers certainly not having a good time at all, as another Overcast Spirit Leech is going to be coming in. That's 3 Spirit Leeches, so quite a lot of Winds of Magic has been used to take out the bolt throws, but all of their models are now indeed done for, so the Empire can pick and choose where the engagement does take place, which of course will be on this high ground here. Red Spears are pushing through aggressively, and it looks like the Gaze of Malice is going to be popping down on the Huntsman, at least pushing some of them down onto their knees, allowing him to escape away from their fire. But a big fight is going up in the skies. We are going to see Deadly Onslaught and Foe Seeker popped on Boris, but also a Soul Stealer shall be coming in with some Shade Overwatch fire. So Boris needs to be very, very careful here. Looks like he's going to be darting into the back lines, but Cold One Knights are lurking nearby and have the potential to swarm him. And it looks like some quick reactions from the Dark Elf player. The Cold One Knights are going to be charging in here, looking for a good surround, and Boris will really struggle to push through so many Knights. We even have the Dark Riders and Witch Elves coming in, who might be able to rampage him, and Malekith. So everything being chucked at Boris here. He's not going to have a good time at all. We have a nice little close look in. He's desperately trying to push through, and luckily for him, he managed to find a gap through some of the foot troops rather than the cold ones. It looks like maybe he'd better get up in the skies. The Dark Elf player doing a good move here, bringing the Dark Riders round in front of him to try and pin him in. Now, elsewhere across the battlefield, it looks like swordsmen are being put to the sword by the fearsome Witch Elves, who are much better damage dealers, going to be finding the little kind of holes in the Empire armour and slicing them open with deadly efficiency. We have more Cold One Knights wrapping around that right-hand flank, trying desperately to get into the back line. The Huntsman doing some lovely Overwatch fire, dragging a few of these mighty men down off their Cold Ones. But it looks like they are going to have to break into the back line unless these Halberds can push forward. Some cannon fire coming in though and wreaking havoc. Pistoliers even engaging in hand-to-hand combat to try and allow the Huntsman time to whittle them down and finish them off. Let's go have a little look to see how Boris did get on. Not too good. He's been chased off the field. Should be able to outstrip the Witch Elves, though, and get into the skies and perhaps return. It looks like some of the mighty Knights of the Blazing Sun have saturated on top of Halberds, and this is actually a really good engagement here for the forces of the Empire. The Halberds are going to be helping to drag down the Dark Riders and Cold One Knights, allowing the Knights of the Blazing Sun to punch above their weight. Normally they'd be losing this engagement. There's simply too many Dark Elves here. As you can see, a lot of the Halberds poking those mighty weapons and dragging down the big beasties. Up in the skies, Malekith is certainly lurking, perhaps going to be coming in with a breath attack soon. So it looks like another Spirit Leech has gone down, this time on the Cold One Knights to try and drag them away. But in the distance, Boris has managed to recover and is regenerating, which is fantastic news for the forces of the Empire. A little less so for the Dark Elves. We did have a breath attack coming in there, helping to break off those Knights of the Blazing Sun and Halberds. Fantastic value all round. Great Cannon is still fully operational at the moment and arcing shots across the battlefield, downfield, and aiming for the Cold One Knights, trying to take away the mobility of the Dark Elf force. And Empire looking a little bit thin now on the ground force here. Halberds doing a brilliant job rampaging the Cold One Knights, and this is one of the reasons Cold One Knights struggle compared to other cavalry. Yes, they have good stats, but rampage is a big problem. Normally the Dark Elf player could micro away here and pull himself away from the anti-large troops, but because of rampage, there's not much they can do. Huntsmen are starting to venture forward a little bit more adventurously now, probably trying to take the fight to Malekith slightly, as both forces have been absolutely hammered here. It's been a real thunderous affair so far. Boris in the background can be seen as well, routing off some Witch Elves and cleaning up the rest of the troops. A big Gaze of Malice coming down into the back of the Huntsmen, shoving them face first into the dirt and allowing the Witch Elves to catch up with them, although they have been Spirit Leeched. It looks like the Dark Elf forces, very battered, have managed to now push through, starting starting to get towards the back line, and at last Malekith has popped in and finally shut down the Great Cannon. But the Empire player here doing exactly what you should do. So he's taken them off the cannons, completely abandoned the cannons for now, and is fleeing towards some of his anti-large troops. You want us to come get us, you're going to have to pay for it, and it's going to take you more and more time. If you don't go after a Great Cannon crew, they can simply waddle their way back late game, hop on top of those cannons, and continue to get value. But Boris, the man of the people, trying to prove he is no meme, he is the man France thinks he is, going toe-to-toe with Malekith, but taking a big breath attack to the face and a Soul Sealer. It's certainly not going to be going well for the brave knight. And yeah, he's losing this fight pretty handily, it would seem, although Deadly Onslaught is keeping him in action. Not too bad, but it looks like once again Malekith is going to be dragging the Empire player out of position and then using the Shades to really ensure he wins that engagement rather handily, which is some good play by him as well. And it looks like only a few shots firing in for now, but they should start getting their volleys going relatively soon. Witch Elves completely battered at this point, up to over 100 kills. Very impressive so far. Have managed to rampage the cannon crew, which is pretty hilarious. And they're trying to help out the Halberds, the regiment of renowned spearmen, who are getting run over at the moment by Knights of the Blazing Sun. And yes, basic spearmen have that bonus versus large, but unfortunately don't have much AP, so they still can struggle up against heavy knights. Looks like a load of those shade shots do go into the back of Malekith, which is the Dark Elf way to betray each other where possible. And he's going to be pulling back from Boris here. I think he needs to take that fight and try and finish him off where possible. But maybe he's trying to dart down and save some of his Dark Elven brethren, as it looks like the Halberds have managed to stabilise for now. Need to saturate on top of these shades to give them the best chance of dragging down the Knights of the Blazing Sun. Big fat Gaze of Malice coming in once more, and we're getting some okay damage. It wasn't actually as well cast, that one, a little bit further, too far away from the opponent. With bolt throws, haven't managed to get much damage at all, of course, shut down rather early on. I've been charging into glorious hand-to-hand combat and slaying some of the glorious knights. Imagine that you're a knight, you've trained your entire life to duel like a god, and you get killed by someone who literally pulls the lever. Unfortunately, Boris has gone down as expected there. Looks like his head has kind of morphed into that tree there, or at least the wing has. And with Malekith still roaming the field, this is going to be a very hard fight for the forces of the Empire, but we still do have that Deathcaster who can Spirit Leech Malekith down. Of course, Malekith doesn't have healing apart from Soul Stealer, and he's already used a couple of those, so Winds of Magic are relatively low at this point, I would assume. And the Great Cannon is still fully operational and protected by a unit of Halberds, so that cannon going to be doing nice, consistent damage, big burst damage, in fact, when it does hit Malekith. And if he wants to come in and take this fight on, he's going to have to get through a load of anti-large troops. Looks like he was going for a breath attack there, perhaps, as well, but has been stuttered and stammering because of the Great Cannon shots. But in comes the big breath attack, and whoosh, it hits a load of troops. It does not take down that Great Cannon. It's still operational. Halberds as well took a little bit of chip damage there, although the cannon crew is running for the hills, and the Deathcaster, flee, flee for your lives, he screams as he runs towards the Halberds, instantly gets terrified and sniped out incredibly quickly. He does have potential to rally here, and Malekith a little slow off the ground. Halberds are going to be nipping at his heels, but that mighty dragon is rather slumberously going to pull itself up into the air. So apart from that, let's have a little view of the whole battlefield and see what we're dealing with. So there's a couple of Witch Elf units which won't really have an impact on the game because they're so low, as well as Bolt Thrower crews. Apart from that, Empire, the Knights of Blazing Sun are going to be cleaning up the rest of these troops. That's pretty good for them. So it is relatively Malekith against the world, and the caster and cannon have both rallied, which is a huge problem for Malekith. It looks like he's going over here to try and save the rest of his troops. I think at this point it would honestly be better to sacrifice them and ensure 100% he chases off the Deathcaster, because then all the leadership of the Empire is gone, and then finishes off the cannon. So that is still, you know, potential for big damage here. But instead he wants to save his own troops, and I understand, I'm sure they'll really appreciate him as well in the kind of feasts to come. So Malekith is once again going to be getting up into the air. He has shattered those spearmen for good. The Knights of Blazing Sun here up to 228 kills and over 2,000 damage dealt. A very impressive performance so far by them. But look who is back online, the Great Cannon. Now I think Malekith has one breath attack left, if I've been counting correctly, which is heavily debatable. If you can get down the side here and burst through the Halberds and the Great Cannon, that would be some really good stuff. But it looks like it's going to be going for a fat Soul Sealer instead before cancelling it. And maybe going for something else. Nope, he's going to be popping it once more, which is not a terrible idea. He does need to recuperate some of his own health and weaken this big batch of troops. But he's going to be charging straight in to those anti-large badasses. And these guys are men of Sigmar. They are made of sterner stuff than your average human, and they're going to be pushing back this dragon. Even the wizard is getting there, yelling words of encouragement and driving off the foul beast once more. Although it looks like the Great Cannon crew having other plans and deciding to flee, which I don't, again, personally blame them. Knights of the Blazing Sun have returned, and they could be pretty huge here. They can literally clear up absolutely everything and then pin in the mighty Malekith Meister himself. Although it looks like he has just slammed and ground that Dark Wizard into dust, and he's been completely finished off there. And with that, we could see a chain rout. Spearmen are being terrified and running for the hills. Halberds, as well as Knights of the Blazing Sun, the morale has dropped to about halfway through, and some effective cycle charging from Malekith could really destroy this Empire force. Even the Reaper Bolt Thrower crews are left standing, ever loyal to the mighty man, the myth, the legend of Malekith. And Knights of the Blazing Sun are going to betray their state troops and flee for their lives, taking flight across the field there. It looks like more Spearmen are going to be returning as well, but the backbone of Halberds here are doing a really fantastic job. Who would have thought it? The basic state troops taking on a mighty Dark Elf legendary lord, and coming out on top, it would seem. Helebroni are slowly going to be going down here, as well as these glorious crews as Malekith comes thundering in there, obliterating poor Halberds. Look at these guys getting sent flying, but up on their feet they do get for rallying to the cause. Now, these crewmen are going to be going down relatively soon. I don't think this was taking place in a tournament, so technically Malekith can just inevitably cycle charge here if this was just on ladder. Of course, in a tournament situation, now that everything is broken, Malekith would have to stand and fight, but he's got a pretty 50-50 chance. So, I mean, Halberds as well as Spearmen certainly could drag him down, but it looks like he's going to be taking flight and doing some cycle charging, which, you know, in a non-tournament setting is a, you know, good viable tactic, I suppose. The Knights of the Blazing Sun are going to be fleeing across the fields. Actually, no, it looks like they're going to be charging into the Helebroni, perhaps to try and finish them off for good. And it looks like Malekith is going to be forced to land now, as there is no other Dark Elf troops fighting on the field. So, one man versus 122, but that 122 is ticking down by the second. Can the men hold? Malekith still has over 2,000 health and up to 150 kills. Very impressive stuff. Is attempting to drag himself away from the Spearmen and the Halberds up into the skies, but every time he does do so, his morale is going to drop pretty significantly, and this will only increase the longer the game goes on. And is also allowing the forces of the Empire to kind of gather their strength and forces. You can see the Empire have gone into some tight formations, which would be very bad if a breath attack is due. But otherwise, it's really going to help them pin in the larger threat. Now, it looks like the Knights of the Blazing Sun are the target for Malekith, which is a good idea. They're the one unit you really don't want counter-charging you because of that big charge bonus. The Spearmen and the Halberds, it's a little less important. But yeah, it looks like we are going to see some cycle charging coming in here. We'll see how this does indeed go. Balance power is hugely in favour of the mighty Malekith at this point. Almost army losses, but looks like the state troops want to fight a little while longer. I do not blame them. They're actually holding relatively well despite the balance power being low, especially these Halberds, true champs of the people, and every time Malekith comes in, he is getting clobbered. And now you can see the recent mass changes, I say recent, it's a little while ago now, coming into effect. Troops get pushed over way less, and the dragon takes a considerable amount of time to get up and into the air once more when it is fully surrounded by troops like this. So it looks like Malekith is trying to bite his way out of this one and force these troops to clear a path. The dragon has had enough of these pointy spears and halberds coming into his face, and he is staggering back in a wounded state here, covered in blood of both himself and the enemies. But balance power dragging itself back to the even playing field as Malekith is going down here. This is wild. Down to just 800 health. Halberd is chasing him, taunting him, yelling all kinds of insults and praises to Sigma. Malekith going to float in the air, which is a really bad idea because at this point his morale will almost certainly break before he even gets back in the engagement, but he does manage to swoop in just about in time. But again, that tightly packed formation of Halberds isn't going to be going anywhere. These bad boys have gained a chevron since the start of the battle, which is very impressive, and I think they may have this. Balance power is gone back to dead even at this point. Malekith is wavering down to just 400 health, and somehow those halberdiers and spearmen do what no knight or legendary hero could do. They have forced off Malekith, dragging him from his mighty steed. A Pyrrhic victory for the forces of the Empire. Can't get much more Pyrrhic than that. Fantastic game. Massive shout out to Walt the Salt, as well as Elfarian Shades. I think we've had Elfarian Shades a few times on the channel. so always good to see him in action, representing EC there. And Walt the Salt, I believe, is making his debut. So awesome stuff there. Before we do some analysis here, I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please do consider subscribing to the channel for more Total War Warhammer content, and giving the video a big old thumbs up. And feel free to comment as well. I do view all the comments. Unfortunately, I'm not able to reply to them all, but I do really appreciate them, and it's honestly a really good time. It does bring a big smile to my face going through the comments and seeing, you know, people discussing the battle and all that good fun stuff. But anyway, let's have a little look at the build. So the mighty Elfarian here, I suppose kind of betraying Elfarian realistically. Maybe the Shades, though, is a shout out to the fact he's kind of the shade of Elfarian. He's the Dark Elves. Malekith was the MVP by far, coming in with a whopping 5,700 damage value and over 21,000 damage dealt. Is scary stuff indeed. 179 kills, and he certainly carried this build quite heavily. Now, some of the Witch Elves performed okay, getting some pretty good damage across the board, as well as the Shades, who made a big impact in the fight in the skies, helping to drag down Boris. But unfortunately for the Dark Elf force, the bolt throwers just got absolutely wrecked. Now, they did take a lot of Winds of Magic cost, health on the caster, and a lot of ammunition on the cannon to do so, but it was certainly worth it. Forcing that defensive Dark Elf build, which had been designed to fight in a defensive formation, force them out of their comfort zone and to go on the aggressive, really helped the Empire hugely, in my opinion. Allow them to fight on that high ground and, you know, keep the enemy at bay. As for Walt the Salt's forces, unfortunately, Boris, I mean, he had an okay time. He managed to do certainly a decent amount of damage, over 3,700, and chased off some units in the periphery and kept Malekith busy for a rather long time. But unfortunately, he was outmatched and outclassed. But despite that, he certainly put on a good showing for the forces of the Empire. Now, the Wizard all round did some pretty good work. Simply just Spirit Leech spam. It's the way to go. It's been a thing that's been around for absolutely ages. Very effective. It's a cheap spell, and it does pretty good consistent damage, which certainly adds up over the course of the game. He was a good backbone as well in the later stages of the game, inspiring the troops and keeping them active and fighting, before unfortunately finding his demise at the hands of Malekith. Now, for the rest of the build, some of the Knights of Blazing Sun did absolutely fantastic. 245 kills on this unit is very good stuff. The other ones did struggle a little bit. Malekith got some really good engagements on them all around, as well as a kind of combination of Cold War Knights and Sisters in the mix. Unfortunately, well, I mean, Pestilens didn't do too bad. They got okay damage value, one of them making their money back, the other not quite doing it. Great Cannon, on the other hand, did absolutely great, pun intended. Nearly 5.5 thousand damage dealt and over 1,500 damage value. Was a consistent threat, and as we spoke about earlier, really pulled the Dark Elves into that engagement. But the MVPs was this unit of Halberds, up to over 3,000 damage dealt, holding the line for Sigma, singing his praises and dragging down Malekith. I have no idea how those guys held, but they did it, and they did it very well, and it claimed victory. Anyway guys, hope you enjoyed that one. Until next time, peace, and as always, stay awesome.